up the day that the men of the village leave with Ikemefuna. It says the men returned with a pot of wine. They were all fully dressed as if they were going to a big clan meeting or to pay a visit. Okay, they take their machetes with them. That doesn't necessarily have to imply to anyone that they're about to go kill somebody. Would have been something that they normally did. And they take this pot of wine with them. We're going to come back and look at that pot of wine later. It's interesting that they take this pot of wine. It says that a deathly silence descended on Okonkwo's compound, so that everybody understands that this is a tragedy, that this is a very sad thing that's happened. They resign themselves to it, but with great, great sadness. They don't talk about the fact of exactly what's going to happen, but everyone is very sad. Okay, the very beginning of the journey, the men are able to, compartmentalize the real purpose of their task, and they're able to talk and laugh about various things. But as they get nearer the outskirts of their village, and the task gets nearer, they become silent too. And so, as they are walking, there's an interesting sound that they hear. It says, from the distance came the faint beating of the ekwe. It rose and faded with the wind, a peaceful dance from a distant clan. So as they are leaving Imofia to kill this boy, Achebe juxtaposes that image with the image of a song about peace. He goes on to say that somewhere a man was taking one of the titles of his clan with music and dancing and a great feast. So while they are walking away to do this unspeakable act, this murder, at the same time another village is celebrating a man's title. So we've got two different looks, two different ways of seeing a man's greatness here. We have, the accomplishment of a title, what the hard work that goes into that, what it means, and the celebration of that hard work. That type of greatness. And then we have this murder that they resign themselves to because it is decreed as what must be done. And that's not greatness. That's blind acceptance without questioning. And so we need to make no mistake that that juxtaposition is deliberate by Achebe. All right, moving back to plot development. The men are walking more quickly. And actually Ikemefuna begins to feel more at ease because Okonkwo is next to him. Okonkwo is walking behind him. So he knows he doesn't have to watch his back because Okonkwo is there. That adds a sense of even more tragedy to this sad situation. It says he could hardly imagine that Okonkwo was not his real father, and that in fact he'd never been fond of his real father, that they were very distant, that he identified himself more with his younger sister and his mother. And he's beginning to believe that he really is going to go home and see them. And then he has a fear that perhaps his mother has died since then. Then what will he do? He forces it out of his mind. He remembers a song, and he begins to sing it to help him through his fear. And it's kind of like the counting the petals of a flower. He loves me not. He loves me not. And whatever one you end on is what the deal is. Or the song we sing, eeny, meeny, miny, moe, catch a tiger by the toe. If he hollers, make him pay $50 every day. And whichever, you land on is the person who gets something, right? And that's what he's doing here. He's singing this song and walking to the beat, and if the song ends on his right foot, his mother is alive. If it ends on his left foot, she's dead. And why does Achebe give us this image? Well, it's one more parallel we can draw to our own culture, that we make similar arbitrary decisions to comfort ourselves when there's no other way that we can convince ourselves of something. Then all of a sudden he hears someone clear his throat, like a, like, okay, that's the signal. And he looks back, but the men begin to, growl at him, and he's concerned about that. It says that it sent cold fear down his back. And then he realizes that Okonkwo has withdrawn, has fallen further back behind him, and he loses that sense of trust, and he begins to be even more afraid. Okonkwo looks away when he sees the man draw and raise his machete up high. He hears the blow. He didn't watch it. It's the first time we really see that he shies away from violence. That really rounds him out as a person, because we know that deep down he is not just the aggressive, violent beast. He hears Ikemefuna cry out, "Oh, my father, they have killed me," as he runs toward him. So he's running towards Ikemefuna. But when he gets there, it says, dazed with fear, Okonkwo drew his machete and cut him down. He was afraid of being thought weak. He runs toward him as a father. But when he gets there, this idea that he's possessed takes over, and he recognizes that he's responding emotionally as a father, which he equates with weakness. He's instantly afraid of being thought weak. He disregards what Ezi Udu told him, and he finishes the job. And he is the one who strikes the final blow. He can only respond with violence in that moment, because the fear of being weak is greater than any other feeling he has. Interestingly, the effect this has on Nwoye is written about by Achebe quite poignantly. It says on page 61 that Nwoye knew that Ikemefuna had been killed as soon as his father walked in. And it says that inside Nwoye, something seemed to give way, like the snapping of a tightened bow. So if you think about pulling something as far as you can pull it, and then it finally snaps, that's how Nwoye felt inside. Like he's been pushed to the edge and finally pushed past it. And so Nwoye remembers another time in his life when he felt that way inside. And we are given another piece of cultural, I guess, detail. So another detail about this culture. Because Nwoye remembers a time that he was on a distant farm on their way back, and he heard the sound of infants crying in a forest. And that all the women had suddenly gotten very quiet, and then they started walking much faster away from the crying baby. And Nwoye had heard that twins, when they were born, were put in pots and thrown away in the forest, but he'd never yet seen it. And when you read that part, you go, what? Huh? Back up for a second. You'll see this referred to it several times. It's another one of the ways that Ch7 shows the weakness, the flaws of this religion. That there are parts of this religion that are admirable, that are good, because they're balanced with reason. And there are parts that are not, and they are superstition, and they're not good. This is one of them. Nwoye responds to the death of Ikemefuna in the same way that he responded to the abandoned twins in the forest. It feels wrong to him on the inside, because it is, obviously. But it says on page 62 that when that happened, a vague chill descended on him, and his head had seemed to swell. Something had given way inside him. And he says that same feeling descended on him again, because he knows that murder is wrong, and he can't resign himself to it. Okay? And that's how we're left with chapter 7. It's a very heavy chapter, and it's probably the hardest thing to read, in the whole novel. All right. That's the end of chapter 7, so I'll stop there.